Welcome to the fourth and final edition of the BITSoM Ideas Festival. What a delight it's been over these last 3 weeks, last four, if I include today as well, just to put this all together and work with such brilliant people spread around the world. I really hope you've been doing very well. It's been a time of intense change, but I really hope you've been picking up some of these ideas that have been coming from here and playing with them. If you're new and are joining us for the first time, welcome. We have recordings of the earlier conversations on AirMeet. Please go check them out. They were delightful and a great bundle of ideas and thoughts that will set the context for several of the things that we will do. And you will hear some of it today as well. Today, as I said, is the last and final evening for this event for this year. Some things remain the same. Please continue to work with conversations on the chat window. Keep writing in, keep popping in your comments. Please keep popping in your questions. The other thing that's quite common and continuing from the earlier sessions is our friend of connected art, Santosh Nair, whose graphic recordings are going to keep us company and help us understand and carry a small but important portrait of what's happened at different events. But something else is different for this time, and that is that this event for today is also done in partnership with the Wheeler Institute of Business and Development at the London School of Business, London Business School. It brings an international perspective tailored for Indian audiences and people of this geography and for the times that we live in. Today's sessions also bring perspectives by the Wheeler Institute of Business and Development that will be of particular interest to everyone here today. The Wheeler Institute has an existing and well founded relationship with BITSoM, and we'll hear more about that from none other than Professor Rajesh Chandy, who is the executive director and professor of the institute, along with Dean of BITSoM, Ranjan Banerjee. Over to you, Professor Rajesh Chandy.
Thank you very much, Ravi. Kavi, it's such a delight to be here and be this part of this final session, final one of many in the future. I suspect, knowing Ranjan over the years, I suspect this is one of many wonderful things that'll come out of BITSoM in the years to come. My name, as you mentioned, is Rajesh Chandy. I am a professor at London Business School, and I'm also academic director of this very unique, in our opinion, institute within London Business School. The Wheeler Institute for Business and Development was created with a generous gift from the founders of Lonely Planet, the travel guidebook company. Entrepreneurs Tony and Maureen Wheeler, whose hope and vision from the Institute and our vision has been to approach some of the biggest problems facing the world today and the challenges facing the world today and apply the power of business to address these problems. We do so through new research. We do so by bringing together communities of practice, and this is a wonderful such example. And we do so through shaping the minds of the next generation through education. So for all these reasons, it was an absolute delight when I heard from an old friend. A friend from many years ago, not very old though, Ranjan Banerjee, the inaugural dean of BITSoM, discussing this or suggesting this idea. And here we are with this wonderful set of panelists who will join us today. Now, our first two speakers, I have a unique pleasure in welcoming back to our community. But before I introduce our first two speakers and then give you a sense for what else is coming, let me turn things over to Ranjan and ask if he has anything to add.
No, I think Rajesh, it's just very nice how this relationship with London Business School has evolved, and of course, our relationship. And Rajesh was very humble in saying this. He was the faculty who was a part of my recruiting committee as a PhD student at the University of Minnesota. So ours is first a student-faculty relationship, which has transited to a friend relationship over the years. So that is the first thing. The second is that our relationship with LBS really started with the relationship between Mr. Kumar Mangaram Birla, who is a very valued LBS alumnus, and the dean of LBS. And we have a set of initiatives agreed on. So later on in September, our founding class, many of whom are already on this conversation, will be going to London Business School for an exclusive tailored immersion for BITSoM. We are also talking about the possibility of building some executive education on women's leadership together and having LBS faculty come and teach some of the electives at BITSoM. And these are all things that are part of the agreement. But what is so nice is that when you have a chat with an old friend like Rajesh, and we do things that are beyond the agreement, and that's what we are seeing today. So that's I'm just happy that this is happening, and I think you initiate partnerships with a set of things, but when the value fit is there, there is so much else that evolves, and I think it's really satisfying to see this.
It's a wonderful phrase you use, value fit, Ranjan. And on the topic of value and fit, I want to introduce our first two speakers. And I will pop back in throughout our session this evening to introduce other members who will be joining us throughout this session. But first, it is a particular privilege for me to introduce our first two panelists. Savio Kwan, who, again, I've known for the last 14 years since I joined London Business School. Savio is one of our most distinguished alumni from London Business School, also on our board of governors now at the London Business School. Savio has had a remarkable career. Of course, the Alibaba story, which is just incredible, and Savio had a pilot side seat, in fact, in piloting, helping pilot the organization. That is in many ways. That is one that our students at London Business School have had the privilege of hearing a few times from Savio. But Savio approached the Alibaba role after a distinguished career in several large Western multinationals, General Electric, among others. And since he left Alibaba, he's also done some remarkable entrepreneurial activities and helping build the ecosystem in entrepreneurship in China, among other places. And he remains an inspiration to very many of our students. Savio is also a generous benefactor to London Business School. We'll hear more about that during the session. And this session will be hosted by another dear friend. I feel like I'm in the company of friends here, thanks to BITSoM and Ranjan, dear friends. Madan Pillutla, Dean of the Indian School of Business, who's been a faculty member at London Business School even far longer than I have been. And until his last role at London Business School as a faculty member was as my boss when I was chair of the marketing group at London Business School. Madan was the senior dean of faculty at London Business School. He's since moved a few thousand kilometers away to Hyderabad to be the dean of the Indian School of Business. But I couldn't resist the opportunity to invite Madan back to our community to host this activity. Also because Madan and Savio have known each other for quite a while. Let me hand things over to Madan. Welcome back, Madan. I should have mentioned a distinguished researcher, won many. Published extremely prolifically, also won teaching awards left and right, and has been a leader in academia for a while. Madan, over to you, and Savio, welcome.
Thank you, Rajesh. Very, very generous introduction. It's my pleasure to be here. It's really an honor to be alongside Savio and to have a conversation with him. Savio, just before we go in, just to put in a little bit of I'll add to the little bio that Rajesh put out on me. I'm an alumnus of the Birla Institute of Technology and Science, BITS Pilani, being here for me is very much part of being among two different communities of mine that are very, very dear to my heart. One is obviously LBS, and the other is BITS. So with that, let me just welcome Savio. Savio, it's been a long time since I've seen you. I still remember that I had the pleasure of having you in my office when you came to see Herminia Ibarra, and she was not there. You were in the you were in the corridor, and I said, like, why don't you come and sit in my office? And we sat and talked for about half an hour. So it feels wonderful again, Savio, to reconnect with you. Welcome on board. And I can start off straight away, Savio, unless you want to say a few words to begin with, because the people here are wanting to hear from you, about Alibaba for sure, but then a whole bunch of other things that they want to. But let me hand over the floor. Do you want to make some opening remarks, Savio?
A quick couple comment, Madan. Very nice to get back, albeit over the internet. I remember that a number of years ago, when you kindly grabbed me by the hand, and then we sat down in your office. But I also want to mention something. When I saw the invitation, and then it mentioned Ranjan, and then I thought it was actually the same name as the Ranjan I went to MSc 9 with at London Business School. And then Rajesh helpfully told me, no, it is not the same Ranjan, but what a pleasant surprise. Very happy to be joining you all, and really humble to be invited. Thank you.
Thank you, Savio. So thank you. I'm sure that you will like this Ranjan just as much as you like the Ranjan that you went to school with, and you'll share the same warm regard with him. So
quite a bit younger.
Quite a bit younger, yes. So Savio, let's begin with Alibaba, right? So let's begin with Alibaba. You joined Alibaba after about 17, 18 years in GE, I believe, so
yes, 17 years,
yeah, 17 years in
and then
GE.
3 more years with another big company
Okay.
after GE. Yes.
Okay. So straight jumping into it, at the time that you joined into Alibaba, it's not what it was now. It clearly was not what it was now. It was a company in trouble, actually, at the time that when you came in. It was a young company, but it was a company in trouble. Tell us a little about that, Savio, because I know you don't like to be known as the savior of Alibaba. That's not you. You're emphatic that that's not what you did, but that's the way the world sees it. So why don't you tell us in your own words a little about how you came to be at Alibaba, and the first month that you spent in Alibaba, because that was an action-packed month, the first month that you were there.
Yeah, but then very much so. In fact, the company sent a headhunter to find their first president and COO. And when the headhunter, whom I knew because I worked with him before, told me about Alibaba, I thought, is it a restaurant? I thought it was some kind of a joke. And then he told me, no, it is a new economy. Now, I have learned a big lesson during, from the day of me joining London Business School. It's not to ask what the other person can do for you, but very much what you can do for the other person. So I asked, what an old economy guy like me can do to help a new economy set up like Alibaba for Jack Ma? And then the headhunter gave the right answer. He said, Jack has founded a fantastic a new economy, but he really do not need another new economy guy to be his COO, but he needed someone from the old economy who can actually help him put the kind of systems and other business discipline, institutionalize those that he lacks. That actually is the correct answer. Then I realized that I can actually, be of help. So I threw my head in the ring and end up beating the other 5 or 6 competitors to get the job.
Right.
But you're right. The first few days, not months, because the time scale, the cycle time at a startup like Ali is a very, very fast and very short. We're not talking about years. The kind of decision I used to help make in a big company, I would only take effect after several years. But here at Ali, I knew immediately I have to do something. Why? Because we raised the $25 million, which is a lot of money in the 1999 and 2000 year kind of a time phase. But we were burning so much that we are left with $10 million. I remember Jack telling me, Savio, we have lots of money. I said, how much? He said, 10 million. I said, wow, a lot of money. And then Joe Tsai, the another founder and vice chairman now, said, but Savio, we have a high burn rate. And I said, Joe, I never heard of a burn rates before. In GE, Jack Welch always talk about earn rate. So nobody talk about burn rate. So what does burn rate means? And I remember Joe telling me, it is an eloquent way of saying you're not making any money. So I say, how much per month? He say, 2 million. And then said loudly, US dollar. So we only had 5 months to live. And we have something like 365 people all over 5 continents. We have a big team in the Silicon Valley. We have a team in Europe. We have a big team in Hong Kong. We have Korea. And then we have like China, mainland China, everywhere in mainland China, almost all over the places. Shanghai, Beijing, Dalian, Chongqing, Chengdu, you name it. Wuhan, you name it, we have it. But, where we heading? So then I said, look, guys, we cannot go on like this anymore. We have to really reduce the burn quickly, preferably within a month. Why within a month? Because time is of the essence. If you go over another month, you can't stop burning another 2 million.
Right.
Once you start up even one day. So the 3 of us huddled together, I remember. Jack is great in terms of strategy. So he quickly came up with a strategy of last man standing.
Okay.
So that means in the cowboy film, you can keep shooting and you might be hit by a few bullets, but as long as you don't fall down, then you will be the last man standing. Gary Cooper and all that.
Right.
And then, but what are the priorities? And Jack quickly came up with the 3 B2C, not a business to a consumer. The first B2C is back to China. The second B2C is where about in China? Back to coast, the coastal area of China. The third B2C is back to center. There has to be a center. We had none of those. We are all over the places. But once we got this 3 B2C and time is of the essence, then Joe and I started embarking on a big journey, and a very quick journey of getting downsizing and right sizing and all that. I remember it was a Chinese New Year. It's very similar to this year. Chinese New Year comes up really early, and it was like in the late part of January, and we had a Chinese New Year reunion dinner in the Hong Kong office with 3 tables, something like 30 people, and then we had a great time. And then we're walking back to the office. Our office is like you can find better, but you can't pay more type, like merchant bank kind of office in the tip-top office district of center in Hong Kong. And then the young men and women were walking along me and say, Savio, what do you think? So I said, well, we can't go on like this anymore. So we have to change. And then they asked me very eagerly, do you have a plan? And then when are we going to do it? I look at Joe. Joe was walking alongside me. Joe knew exactly what I was thinking. I said, well, why don't we do it this afternoon when we get back to the office? I think Joe's face went pale because he know after Chinese New Year reunion, that is exactly what we're going to do. So we went back to the office, call everybody in one by one and fire everybody. And then send a notice, a letter to the landlord, and say we are leaving, and found a small hovel in Wan Chai for the 4 or 5 of us who were left. Right. That was my first day, kind of almost the first day action. Right. So I think that actually time is of the essence. So right. We quickly did. The US, Europe, and then mainland China, we reduced 365 people to 150. We stemmed the flow of 2 million burn down to $500,000 per month, and then we're left with $9 million. Right. So that is actually time is of the essence. But then we actually bought ourselves 18 months, a little runway.
Right. So Savio, thank you. Fascinating. The one thing that, I've read somewhere, I've also seen some of your videos where you talked about the right and the dignified way in which you need to let people go, because this is the way that you're talking, it was very, very clear that you needed to stem the hemorrhaging of money. It was very, very clear that you needed to redefine. It was very clear that you needed to let people go. But there is a right way in which you need to let people go. Can you just talk a little about that, Savio, here?
Yes, you have to be very, very personal, but also very, very matter of fact. You have to look the people in the eye and tell them exactly what's happening, and not mince any words. And then you have to take action. For instance, I remember, when I first went to Hangzhou, I was walking around the floor and I saw a lot of expats in our office. A lot of expats, Western people. So I sort of got hold of one and talked to him. His name is Jan. Jan van der Veer. He's from Belgium. And he is our website, English website head, 20-some-year-old guy. And then I found out how much he earned. I nearly fell off the chair. He was a 6-figure, almost like a lowish but quarter-ish 6-figure US dollar per annum sum. So I called him to my office and I said, Yan, we can't go on like this anymore. But I'm going to make you an offer you cannot refuse. So the offer is half your salary. You still live like a king's king in a place like Hangzhou, where most of our employees get less than 2,000 RMB. You're talking about half that is over, close to 100,000 US dollar. But I would, multiply your stock option by 3 times. He would have gotten away with 1 million original share, later on multiplied by 4 because we split. So he would be a 4 million share person. Even at 120 nowadays, it's like almost close to $500 million US dollar. So he looked at me. He said, Savio, are you from Mars? I have this contract with this great company. Not over my F-King dead body. That is exactly what he said. So I say, look, I am serious because I want to tie your long-term future with the company. So, I did exactly the same with my own package. They cut my salary by more than 95%, and I still accept it. So I'm inviting you to join me. And then he said, again, repeat the same line, not over his dead body. So I say, you're fired. So I personally fired. This is the first guy I fire. And he burst out crying. He said, Savio, what does firing means? So I put my hand around his shoulder and say, firing means that I'm now going to take you to see Lucy Pang, another founder who's an HR manager. And we would work out what we owe you, what you can exercise. And if we owe you 3 months pay, we just pay you 3 months. And then if you want to exercise, you can exercise. If you don't want to exercise, then let's part company. And we did exactly the same. Went to Silicon Valley, 40-some engineers. None of them earned less than $150,000 annually, plus on call and so on, on cost and so on. So I just announced to everybody, we cannot afford to keep everybody here now, none. And then I have the support of the CTO, John Wu, who lived in Silicon Valley, and John was very supportive. And Joe and I and John, when then we let 40-some engineers win. And I remember walking around the booth. It was like half a size of a small football field, very high tech and everything, but everybody's gone. Yeah, we did exactly the same. We honor everything we have to do. No argument, not trying to cut the corner or not trying to, keep a little, but we offer everybody, if you do not want to take cash, then you can take stock. Only 1 or 2 guys did that. They became multi-millionaire later on. So that is the way, it was done, with dignity, with compassion, but very firm, and face-to-face.
Very good. Totally. So Savio, I really like. Thank you for sharing the anecdote about Jan. So this is a very, very difficult time, but you did it. You had to do it in order to save the company. You had to do it in order to position the company for the future. You had to do it. There's something that you said there I want to pick up on, right? So, and which is probably something that you did as you went forward. You wanted within the company people and who aligned with completely with what it is that you wanted to do, and who are going to benefit from the success of the. So as as Alibaba was going to be making success, then the employees were also going to be benefiting from that kind of a success. So their fortunes were tied to the fortunes of Alibaba in some way, which is what you are offering, Jan. So tell us a little about the first few kind of the way that you incentivize the people that you already had, so who you kept behind, and how did you instill this culture of performance and of benefiting as a result of the performance. In that,
Yes.
also, Savio, I also read, and I want to ask you. I heard that you also became a poet of sorts. That one of the rewards of doing very well was to get a poem composed by Savio for the employees. So tell us a little about that too.
Yes, Madan, this is really great question, because it really hits on the core of what happened. I think restructuring is not for the people who are leaving. Restructuring is for the people who are going to be staying with you. So you have to do it once, not 5 times. So one stroke, not a death by 1,000 cuts. So that is really important. If anybody can pick a lesson from this, that's one point. The other point is how to get everybody together. I started that with Jack, because a lot of a misconception saying that Savio brought GE culture into Alibaba and all that. No, nonsense. Savio did not bring any GE culture into Alibaba. The Alibaba culture actually was all started by Jack and his 18 founders. But what I did help to do was bring the method, the GE systematic method of actually keeping those culture in systematic form and alive, and through training and behavior kind of influence that they keep pass on from generation to generation. So I remember just about the 5th days of my first week in Hangzhou on a Saturday, Joe, Jack, and me and John, the 4 O's, and then Lucy, the HR director, and Jing Jianhang, the chief of staff type person to Jack, also a founder. We stood outside Jack's office and start talking, and you know how Jack can talk. So once he start talking, it's really hard to stop him. And Jack was talking about how good we are and so on and so forth. And he mentioned we are good because we have culture, company culture. So I stopped him. I said, Jack, have we written it down? So this is my first GE style question. Jack, have we written down the most valuable thing that we have? And he looked at me and he stopped for almost a full minute. Very hard to get Jack to stop for 1 minute when he's talking, especially when he's on the road. He says, Savio, you're right. We've never written it down. And then he asked, how do we write it down? So I said, vision, mission, and company value. So that is actually what I provided. Vision, mission. So I define what vision means, how big, how tall, how great you want to be. But mission is what you bring to the party. And who are your target customer? What you bring to the party. And then values are the behavior that support that. So he quickly said, vision, 80, 20, 80, 10, and 1. 80 is to last 80 years. 10 is to be the world's top 10 internet company. And 1 is to be the one and only choice of our target customer. I say, who are our target customer? And then he immediately reeled out our mission is let's make doing business easy. So our target customer, very clear. Business people, of course, start off in China. And then what about value? So he said, oh, there are lots of values. So Jing Jianhang went into his office and picked out almost a book, like 60, 70 pages of all the things about value that Jack talked about, and Jing Jianhang has written them down dutifully over the past several years, 2-3 years. So I said, wow, with so many pages of value, how can we make it work? So I gave half to Lucy, and who will start writing it on the whiteboard, copying everything down, downloading all the pages. And I was starting from the top with all the papers, and we wrote almost an hour, all the company value that Jack talked about for the past 3 years or more. And then the 6 of us started 7 hours of brainstorming, asking Jack questions, because he's there. He's the guy. Well, what do you mean by this one? Does this value is the same as the other one, or are they subset and so on? So in the end, after 7 hours and plus 1 hour before, 8 hours of work, we were completely done. We got to 9 values. And then we cannot think anymore. So I grabbed those 9 values back to my hotel room. So I was staying in a hotel room that cost 120 RMB a night. So it is like 10 pounds a night in Hangzhou. And I lived in that hotel for 2 years.
Okay.
Because I want to make a statement that we ran out of money. So, the COO is staying at the 10-pound hotel. So everybody is fighting over themselves to get to a cheaper hotel than me. So which actually helped. Then I sort of say, oh, what about the 9 thing? And then eventually I was able to get them onto one slide with 2 axes. The one axis is really to do with systems. The other axis is to do with the startup values, like passion, like teach and learn, and like openness, and so on. But then we have lots of that, but we have very little of systems. So that is suddenly is very clear. And then the 9th value is called simplicity, is right on the 3rd axis.
Okay.
So you have to be simple in your startup thinking, but you have to sit really simple in your systems thinking, and then everything makes sense. And then we start putting a behavior value to them. And Lucy did a great job. She spent 3 months talking to everybody, distilling what behavior passion means, distilling what customer number 1 means, distilling what quality means, and so on and so forth. And then had 5 levels of escalating kind of behavior. So then we start using that to do measurement after 3 months. So what we did is we gave you 50% of your measurement on performance and 50% of your measurement on value. I don't think I can find too many companies that does that to a fault, and we're still doing it after almost 20 years.
Right.
21 years, 22 years now. Yeah. 21 years now.
Right.
So 2001 March, we start doing it.
Okay. I have a follow-up question for this, Savio, but I still want to know about the poems that you wrote to
Yeah,
your...
the poem. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Should I talk about the poem now? The
Yes.
poem is a subset of our value.
Okay.
Because we were the B2B, we first tackled B2B, and we then realized it is actually going to be a direct sales force kind of operation. So because I had a lot of building sales force experience in GE, that actually is very much up my alley. So I was very much in it with the team as their COO and so on. I'm there all over the places, but not doing the work myself, but working with the team. And then they were like selling a 200,000 RMB a year, kind of annual per sales revenue. So I said that is not good enough. So I thought, well, maybe I introduce something that would spur some competition. So I installed the $1 Million Club. So very similar to what I learned from GE. It's $1 Million Club is anybody got up to $1 million US sales belong to the club, and then the club, the company would support the club, but not financial, because you already got your bonuses and everything else. But the club is very much like you're a very proud member of the $1 Million Club. So I threw this idea out. Jack says, Savio, from 200,000 to 1 million is like 5 times. What happened if they don't? We have no member. I said, well, let's cross that bridge when the time comes. So nevertheless, we promote this $1 Million Club. And after 8 months, in the 22nd of August, I remember very clearly, of 2002, that the first million guy came. So everybody was overjoyed, because we still have 4 months to get a few more $1 Million Club member. So I said, wow, we should write him a congratulatory message. So everybody, Jack and everybody looked at me and said, Savio, you are the guy who put up the idea of $1 Million Club. Why don't you write him a message yourself? Right. So at the moment of weakness and also like kind of passion, I wrote him a poem. I am no poet, but something that came into my mind, I jotted it down, and then it became a poem, and I sent it to him. Lo and behold, in 10 minutes time, he wrote a poem back to me. So this 2 poem was the first poem of our poet, a kind of a culture in the B2B kind of a space. Everybody started writing poems to each other after that. And that it was fantastic because it actually gelled and bond the whole group of people together. And then they start talking. I got Savio's poem. Have you? If you haven't got Savio's poem, you're not the same level as me in terms of a salesperson. That means Savio's poem became $1 Million Club poem.
Very nice. So have you collected these poems, Savio, and are you going to publish these poems at some point?
Yeah, we did. On the 10th anniversary of the company, I collected something like 330 poems, and I used my own money and printed 2,000 poem books in lovely bound kind of cover and so on. And I thought, wow, I'm going to have to push them. In a matter of 2 days, all of them are gone. I only have one copy myself. So they said, well, Savio, you should have another print. So it's one of those things that I need to do to do another print.
Very nice. So Savio, you said, there are a lot of insightful things that you said, but there's one in particular, that I really, I'm taking to heart. You said, that you didn't, when you came in and people said that you instilled the GE culture, that's not what you did. The culture of Alibaba was there, so it was already there. What you did is that you used the GE kind of methods and the GE systems in order to solidify that culture, in order to instill the culture and the values in every one of those people, to codify it in some sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the way that you said it. So I mean, wonderful. That's really terrific. So what you're also saying is that every company will have its own culture that works for it. But what you need to do is that you need to spend time and effort to make sure that it is systematized. That's the point that you've made there. Wonderful, really
Absolutely.
wonderful.
It's in behavior, not
It,
in the words. Yeah.
right. Terrific. So there's so much that we are talking about Jack here, right? So Savio, that and he was Alibaba personified in lots of ways. So the ideas that he had, the speed with which he came up with new ideas, the speed with which he or the also the very, very kind of decisive way in which he could think about where it is that we need to operate and so on, right? So the vision itself is so very simple, right? So to make doing business easy is so wonderful. So just so simple, but it's clear. You now know what you need to do. Can you tell us a little, Savio, if you were to describe Jack, right, Jack Ma to the world in very short, right? So let's say in 3 sentences, Savio, what would you say? What is it that you've learned from him? You've worked with him so very closely in building this kind of legendary company. What would you say about him? How would you describe what is important or the essence of Jack Ma?
Jack is neither e nor commerce.
Okay.
But then he invented and founded the first e-commerce company in China and made it into one of the quite a big company in a global sense. So he is very, very charismatic. His charisma is unbelievable. And his strong suit is a very strategic leader. So Jack is not the management and getting those things done is not his strong point. His strong point is finding the people who can help him get all those things done for him.
Right.
That is his strong point. But then his other strong point is very much like a leadership, telling people that this is where we are going, and then have the character and the force of his charisma to bring everybody along. So I would give you an example of how we found our first business model. So this is like 9 months, 9 weeks, well, not 9 weeks, less than 9 weeks, like 4 or 5 weeks into 2001. We do not have a business model. We managed to stop the burn. We had $9 million US, still burning $500,000 a month. But what is the business model? We have half a dozen products. We have a product that is called e-solution. That means we can do very complicated a platform like Alibaba platform, so we can do it for other people, and we charge 2 to 3 million RMB to do that. So 200,000 or 300,000 pounds to do that. And then we have internet advertising, we have a web hosting, and we have 1 or 2 other things. And then we have a thing called China supplier, helping SMEs to export. But we do not have a business model, and we have no income. So after telling the board that we have stopped the burn, the board gave us like a 1 minute applause, and then immediately asked a question: when are you going to make money? So I said, wow, we don't have a business model. So when are you going to find the business model? So we left the board meeting, and we went into a small office by the side, very, very cold, because we turned off all the heating to save money. And then the 3 of us, Joe and me and Jack, asked a question, very key question, it turned out. But at the time, we didn't know how and why we asked the question is, should we be giving bribes in a marketplace like China? Because bribing is very apparent, everywhere. So we asked the key question. Jack is neither E nor commerce, so he doesn't understand what bribing really means. Joe went to Yale, and he's a JD in Yale, and I have 17 years with GE, Foreign Corrupt Practice Act, FCPA, Policy 20.4, Policy 20.5, and all that. I knew it by heart, upside down, and I can dream about it. But then Jack is asking me the basic question: Savio, what does bribing mean? I said, giving people money for him or her to do something that they're not supposed to do. How much constitute a bribe? $5 US or 50 or 500? I say, Jack, when you're talking about selling a 2-3 million RMB system, we're talking about 5% or 10% or 15%.
Right.
So then it was like we went on. It was so cold. We were all in our overcoat, and I had my glove on with my scarf, and it was jumping up and down to keep warm. And then for almost a whole day, right until the afternoon, we're still talking. And then suddenly Jack asked the key question. He always asks the key question. He said, Savio, if we give bribe and things go wrong, who goes to jail? So Joe and I were so happy. We both point our fingers at him. He said, I went to jail. Yeah, of course. If you are the CEO, if we bribe and things go wrong, of course you go to jail. And he asked a question. He said, Joe and Savio, would you come and visit me in jail? We really double up laughing. We say, look, Jack, if it is so bad, you went to jail, I think Savio and Joe are going to be in there waiting for you. So after that, very clear. He said, Savio, no bribing because I don't want to go to jail. None of us want to go to jail. So then we start sort of it was up to me to look at all those products we're talking about. So we had people selling this major platform where people who are selling marketing on internet, marketing and so on. One by one, most of them need bribe. So we basically, after several months of telling people you can't give bribe and you still have to get the order, and they come back and fail empty-handed, we say, okay, let's exit those. In the end, we're left with one, which is the helping the SME companies to export. And suddenly it hit us like a ton of bricks. It is not the company who should be our target customer. It is the company's boss.
Right.
That should be our target customer, because they would not accept any bribe because they don't need it. They own the company.
Yeah, very nice.
So we suddenly found that. And then we train all our salespeople, just do one thing. Don't talk to anybody. Secretary or factory managers or marketing managers or chief of staff or whatever, but only talk to the company owner. Right. And that is how we actually make B2B work. And then I got the money to support Taobao and so on and so forth.
Right. So thank you, Savio. This is very good. I've been told we have 3 minutes, Savio, but we can take a little. Okay. I'm sure we'll take a minute more than that, because there is a question that I really want to ask you. So over the years, so I spent many years, as you know, at LBS, and yes, I've seen very many different benefactors in LBS. You stand out, Savio, for something that you did in the years that I've been there, which is very unique. So you endowed a chair in LBS, but you endowed it in the name of Professor Charles Handy. It isn't the Savio Kwan chair, it isn't the Kwan family chair, it's the Charles Handy chair. That's yes, amazing. Just in terms of the humility with which you did it, in terms of the respect that you paid to someone there. Tell us a little about what you think of Charles Handy. What did you get from LBS that made you want to do this, Savio? So, yes, and this is of a lot of personal interest for me, but also I'm sure a lot of people here would be fascinated to hear that story.
Yes, but a very, very good question. In China, we have a saying called 饮水思源. When you drink the water, you think of the source. You don't just drink the water and forget about it. You drink the water and say, where does the water come from? And in this case, the source for me, for my journey at LBS is actually Charles Handy. I remember in 2004, I received a letter from Margaret Edwards, the program administrator, telling me that, Savio, we are afraid that you are not accepted for the MSc 9 program, who's under Professor Charles Handy. So it was like I was hit by lightning, and I was working in my company for Pi of Cambridge in Cambridge. So I didn't do it, say a word. I jumped onto my old sort of a car, the battered Triumph, and drove all the way down to London without knowing the road. But they got to London Business School. At that time, you can still park your car at London Business School. There's a little car park there, but that was a luxury. And I rushed out of the car park and jumped into the MSc program office. And Margaret Edwards was there. He looked at me and said, wow, Savio, you're here. I said, yes, I want to see Charles. And he said, yeah, she's very good. She said, you can, he's having a class, but in a few minutes, he's going to come back and to the office, and before he go to another appointment. So I ambushed Charles outside his office. So I demanded to know, why do you not accept me? And I remember very well, Charles looked at me and he said, Savio, we do not know how much you want to join London Business School. So I was really quite upset. I said, I haven't told you how much I want to join London Business School. I wrote it in all my applications and everything about why I want to join London and so on. And then Charles calmly said, Savio, yes, I know. You told us what London can do for you, but you haven't told us what you can do for London. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Yes, I'm only thinking of myself. I never thought of what I can contribute to London. Why take me? Why not take somebody else who can contribute more? And even of the equal kind of a level of competency and so on and potential. So Charles said, look at me. And then he said, another thing is that your boss did not write you a very good letter. My boss from Pi. And he added, this is obviously because you are a good employee and he doesn't want to lose you. So he wrote a glowing letter, but inside, for people like us who read this letter like a dozen a day, we can see through it. So now, two things. Go back to convince your boss to write a better letter and come back with the better letter, and I would reconsider you. So I went back to my boss and I said, boss, whether you like it or not, I am going to do my MBA, MSc at London or other places. So please write another letter, better letter. He looked at me. They said, I am already Savio. He's already a changed person. He said, Savio, I'm going to write you the best letter. I'm going to write you, tell London Business School, Pi is sponsoring you because you are one of our top employees. So you cannot get any better letter than that. So he gave me that letter. I took that letter back and went to see Charles. So Charles definitely gave me a test, see whether I can get this letter. But then I did more than getting this letter. I actually got a letter saying that, no, you are actually being sponsored by the company. Don't worry.
Right.
So Charles gave me a chance.
Right.
So I drank the water and I said, look, where does the water come from? So really, LBS is actually the kind of the point, the moment where I changed my life. And so I said, look, if I have the means, I would love to acknowledge that. And how better to go back and acknowledge it in the form of a Charles Handy chair. And thank you for persuading Herminia to stay, because she was on a visiting a professor kind of a situation. So that is actually what happened. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Savio. It's been a delight as always to talk to you. There are a tremendous amount of insights that you have shared with us. But I do know that there is a graphic that is going to summarize what you had been saying. So I've taken 4 minutes more, Savio, but I don't think anyone will complain. Given the stories that you've shared with us and the insights that you had. Thank you so very much, Savio, for being you. And for being so frank and so humble in the way that you talk about your journey in building an iconic company that is out there. Thank you very much. So I'd like to invite Kavi.
Thank you, Madan.
Yeah, thank you, Savio.
Yes, thank you. And what a masterclass that was, from poetry to classroom ambush. It'll take us and a whole lot of people a lot of time to process those conversations, and I'm going to reflect on them. From the last time around, I have been making notes of various conversations and just going over them, and it's added so much to my understanding. Reflection is so critical to learning, and research tells us that it's absolutely critical to reflect. Today, we try and weave some reflections into this conversation as well. And first off, for that, I'm going to invite Dipali Nair, the Chief Marketing Officer at IBM India and a member of the Industry Council at BITSoM, on stage here. Thank you so much for joining us, Dipali, today.
Thank you, Kavi. And it was actually a wonderful session. You said it right, masterclass. And I want to, reflect on what he said. And Dean Madan did a good summary in between before asking the last question. But, 5, 6 things stand out in my mind. One is his plain spokenness speaks of his authenticity and wisdom. He's very, very plain speaking, and that's what stands out. Second is that there is a lesson here for multiple entrepreneurs in India. He spoke about the old economy values, systems, processes being, recognized by Jack Ma as important, and, marrying that into new economy disruption. And that, I think, is the formula for success today. Entrepreneurs, who are, looking for growth. And his poems thing, that tells me that, don't let your sense of humor and humanity, ever get lost in pursuit of, business. I think that's extremely important today. When you're running a business and, you're senior and you have, the whole world falling apart, around you. But that, I think, is a matter of preservation. The other interesting thing is that, a lot of people would have focused on the fact that they were, about ethics and values and integrity. But I think what insight he gave us was the kind of discussion they had on ethics and integrity. I think that discussion needs to happen inside organizations. We all know that we need to have integrity and have ethics, but does the discussion happen in a frank manner where people know what, it's all about? And then, what he said about Jack Ma, he said he was charismatic, strategic leader, but he was also good at finding the right people. So he found Savio, and I think that's a very, very interesting bit about success. And I think that's where the entrepreneurs, the startup culture today needs to think about finding the right people, and the right people needn't always be, from the new culture. They needn't all be millennials and Gen Zs. They can come from the old value and old economy systems also. And I think the last bit, which absolutely gave me the goose pimples, was his sense of gratitude. And what he said about Professor Charles Hanley, and what Dean Madan shared with us, that how he's dedicated the chair to Charles Hanley chair. I think that sense of gratitude, I think, in today's world is also a recipe for success. I think this is some of the things that stood out for me in terms of execution, apart from what Dean Madan summed up.
Thank you, Dipali. Just a quick one for you, which is, how can the industry leaders support management education in India? Having heard Savio, what are your views on it?
I think it's extremely important for the industry leaders to come and share. And come and share the hows and the execution aspect, because a lot of the times the case studies, the frameworks, the concepts tell you how it's supposed to be run. But what are the challenges that you have when you're running it are the execution challenges. And within that, how many times you failed when after that you succeeded finally. I think that those stories and the anecdotes of, where you failed and the smaller failures also need to be shared. I think those are not very well documented. And I think business leaders and corporate organizations are in a position to share this, in their journeys with the management students for the purpose of management education. I don't know what you think, Kavi.
That's very interesting. I think the anecdotes around poetry and many other things were beyond me. I mean, I haven't come across all of them before this conversation. And therefore, I think you have a very, very important point. I think it's not only in terms of money, but also in terms of bringing in real life experiences and caselets into conversations. I think that can really
And the last one, and on a note of humor, the young people, and he's told us the story of Yan, take the stock options.
Yeah. Thank you. We're completely out of time. Thank you very much, Dipali. I think I'm going to invite Professor, just for a quick minute or 30 seconds. Let's bring on Santosh Nair's Connected Art, or that brings across completely pulls in all the conversation today from Savio. Yes, and if you have any challenges with it, just click on the expand icon on your right top corner, and you'll see the full picture of that, of the entire conversation that can stay back with you. And this will get posted on various social platforms as well. But this is interesting, isn't it? Just to see these stories are from 20 years ago, but lived and when told in first person, they really, really spark a lot of inspiration and imagination for all of us. Okay, thank you very much, Deepali. Now let's go into the next session, and I'm going to request Professor Rajesh Chandy to come in. He'll set context, introduce the next line of speakers, and an amazing conversation that's slated next. And I'll see you right after that. And you may need to just exit this session and click on the next session, and you'll be invited and you'll be part of the next session there.